Good morning and welcome to our very first Private House Days talk. We're so happy you could join us today to hear from Paul and Barry, who have some truly wonderful advice lined up for how we can attain more direct bookings. This will be followed by a Q&A, which I'm sure you will all find very valuable. So keep your questions in mind and pop them in the chat if things come up during the talk. If you don't know me yet, my name is Cassie Bouverie. I'm the founder of Private House Days, an online booking platform that aims to enable independent accommodation, covering B&Bs, inns, hotels and self-catering properties, all of quality to take bookings direct and cut out the pesky third-party fees. The business has been built from my own experience running a bed and breakfast in Edinburgh, which I did for 12 years, and we are completely unique in what we do. If you'd like to hear more, please feel free to drop me a line. I'm always happy for a chat or a Zoom meeting. Just before we begin, I wanted to point out to you the chat function. If you could all stay on mute during the talks, that would be fabulous, but you'll be welcome to comment, express thoughts or ask questions in the chat at any time. We'll be keeping an eye on it. As you can see, we've just posted our new paperless business cards in there. Well, I hope they've been done. We're really happy to be part of the new Go Paperless online scheme to help reduce paper waste and save our rainforests. So do have a look if you're interested. I would highly recommend them as they're a lot more interactive than your standard business card, as well as being wonderfully sustainable. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Barry Clark. Barry is an absolute wizard when it comes to maximising sales. He's been involved in the Scottish hotel sector for over 30 years, specialising in business development and sales growth. His CV includes managing properties from Shearing's Holidays, Chorus Hotels, Crera Hotels, along with the independent properties such as Stoke Rochford Hall and Scalford Hall Hotel. Barry is also a published author of sales books and founded Dunedin Consultancy in 2017 to support business growth and sales training to hoteliers and the broader business community. He is a recognised expert in the field and we're thrilled to have him with us here. Over to you, Barry.
Cassie, thank you very much indeed, and very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. One or two familiar faces and many new ones as well, so it's great to e-meet and make your acquaintance. Cassie, very grateful for the opportunity to come and join this inaugural Private House Days webinar this morning. Very grateful indeed for the opportunity. And you and I were reminiscing a few days ago when we were planning and strategizing for this group. We were reminiscing of how the hotel industry used to operate when you were directly in the industry and when I. And one of the things that I was reminded of with our conversation the other day, I vividly recall being part of a meeting with one of the hotel companies that I worked for about 20 years ago. So we're talking about 1999, 2000 kind of time. And we were actually sat around a boardroom table debating whether online booking for hotels was going to become a thing. Now, the conclusion we came to in that meeting was, well, yeah, it'll probably become a thing, but people will always still want to talk to us. How wrong did we get that? And it's incredible in a relatively short period of time, really just 20 years, that the booking process, the journey that our customers go through to find us has pretty much completely changed from 180 degrees. And really, it's only in the last 15 years or so that happened. The other thing that happened over the last 15 years or so was the growth and really the dominant position that the OTAs, the online travel agents, the third parties now have in terms of channeling business from the consumer into accommodation providers such as ourselves. And it's a bit of a poison chalice in many people's eyes. A very regular conversation I have with hotel owners of all sizes, from the small private houses and serviced accommodation providers right up to the big chain hotels, is how have we got ourselves into the position where we've become largely dominant on these third-party providers to deliver our accommodation. So it's one of the things that I want to spend, this 10 minutes or so that I'm going to share with you today is looking at how can we start to kind of adjust back from the very dominant position that we've been in. If I refer back, that conversation that I was having back 20 years ago when we didn't really think that online booking was going to become a thing. Back then, the organisation I worked for, which at that time was one of the biggest hotel operators in the UK, online was delivering about 15% of our bookings, and about 80% of our bookings was coming across the telephone. We were still employing vast numbers of people to sit answering telephone calls and to process room bookings into our reservation systems. And it's quite remarkable when we then move 20 years forward to the current time, where that position has virtually reversed 180 degrees. It's not at all uncommon for hotels of all sizes to find that 85% of their reservations are now coming across the online channels, whether that's through your own booking software or through the OTAs. And when I'm talking about OTAs, I'm referring to the likes of Booking.com, Expedia, Hotels.com. Now, it is that bit of a love-hate relationship. And what I want to try and share with you over a couple of minutes is how you can make adjustments in your business to try and start re-leveling that relationship with the OTAs, because they do have such a dominant position in delivering your business. The first thing I'd like to mention to you, and this is a slightly controversial point, but I'd like you to hear me through and to consider what I'm about to say. I would really encourage you to have a little mindset shift in how you think about the third-party online booking agents. And rather than thinking of them as just a source of bookings coming into your business that you're reliant upon, to have a mindset shift that you don't need to be reliant upon those organizations. And I'd really encourage you to adopt a mindset shift of thinking of them as a marketing source, as a means of introducing you to brand new customers. And if you can adopt that mindset shift, then it's a big first step in being able to try and realign the dominance of the OTAs in the hotel market. I'd encourage you to embrace thinking of the OTAs as a means of introducing customers for the first time. But once they've introduced you to that customer, they're your customer. They're your customer to remarket to channel into your own booking channels, to channel through private house stays, to make your direct bookings, and to significantly reduce your cost of acquiring a new customer. Because that's ultimately what an OTA is. It's a cost of you acquiring a new customer into your business. So I'd really encourage you to adopt that mindset shift, and we can delve into that a bit deeper later in the Q&A. So what's facing us at the moment? We're heading into winter 2022. 2021 has been a remarkable year for accommodation providers, in both positively and negatively. And I thought what would be really valuable for us today is for me to share just my thoughts from what I'm hearing from industry colleagues and from industry research as to what we think 2022 is going to look like. Let me start with a slightly negative bit. The coming winter, the first quarter of 2022, it's going to be tough. I think we need to understand that. We need to accept that and not try and shy away from it. It's going to be tough. And in the short term, I would very much be encouraging you to take a mindset of volume over value. I think occupancy, there's not going to be huge levels of demand in quarter one for 2022. So I would encourage you to take whatever is coming and whatever's available. Once Easter arrives, and traditionally in the UK, especially in Scotland, the leisure travel market really opens up from the Easter period through until the late autumn. And what do we expect to see happening in 2022? Well, for larger hotel operators, and I know that's not the people who are on this call, but there's a reason why I'm going to mention this briefly. Larger hotel operators, the biggest challenge right now, and I think this challenge is going to continue through 2022, is actually delivering their product and delivering their service. The staffing situation, I'm not shy to call it the staffing crisis, is really hitting hard within the big hotel operators. I have personally had some really poor experiences on my travels over the last 6 or 7 weeks. The thing is, for the smaller accommodation provider, for the people who are on this call today, that actually presents a great opportunity, presents a huge opportunity. You're more in control of your business because of the smaller scale of it. You're able to focus more upon delivering the great hospitality and service which you do for your guests. The big guys are finding that increasingly difficult at the moment. And to the extreme, I actually encountered in London about 3 weeks ago, a hotel wasn't able to offer me breakfast one morning because they didn't have enough staff that had come into work that day. They actually could not provide breakfast. So for the big hotel operators, that is what they are facing at the moment. So that presents a real opportunity. In terms of domestic travel, all the signs are that 2022 is going to be similar, if slightly quieter, to 2021. We think that there's still likely to be quite a high demand for domestic travel, domestic leisure travel within the UK. And that's going to be driven by two things, really. The public, people are undeniably still apprehensive about COVID, and they're still apprehensive about committing to anything too far ahead, just in case things get worse and are they going to have to cancel. So that is, we think, is very much going to still drive the domestic demand. And the great thing for accommodation providers, especially here in Scotland, is that the UK population has refound the domestic travel. They've been reintroduced to the idea of having a staycation, of staying in the UK and not traveling abroad. Another factor which I think is going to help us through 2022 is that although international travel is opening up, it's not going to be all that easy. And the biggest challenge for international travel, outbound international travel for people going out of the UK on holiday, is that capacity is really quite limited. And I can share with you from first-hand experience, we've recently just booked a bit of a bucket list holiday. I've got a significant birthday coming up next year. We've just booked quite a bucket list trip to Canada. And I have to tell you, although we had a superb travel agent doing it for us, capacity was quite limited and prices were pretty strong. So that is going to put some people off from traveling internationally. The bucket and spade, the kind of, the Spanish, the Greek beach holidays, a little bit of a different situation there. Those operators are much more able to lift capacity. But the problem in the likes of Spain, Greece and Turkey is hotel availability. A lot of coastal resort hotels in those areas have shut down and are not reopening. The other positive to bear in mind for 2022 is that we're very optimistic we will see inbound international leisure travel coming back into Scotland. We've had 2 whole years of not having the Scandinavians, the Germans, the French, the Europeans, the Americans traveling into the UK. And all the trends are quite optimistic that we, perhaps with the exception of the Americans, they're always slow to recover. But certainly from our European friends and neighbours, we're fairly optimistic that we will start to see inbound European travel coming back this year. So how can you help? How can you make a difference in that respect? Well, a couple of questions I would like you to ponder after today's call. And these are really rhetorical questions, but I'm happy to discuss these in the Q&A later as well. The key thing for you as accommodation providers, you have a choice. If your choice is not to gain your business through the large OTAs, my challenge to you is, how much time, money and effort are you investing in marketing your own product? Because that is what is key. How are you getting the exposure? And Paul's going to touch on this, particularly in terms of social media and online marketing. How are you connecting with your potential customer? So what is it that makes you different from the other guest house service accommodation down the street from you? Why would people be visiting you? And then speak to your audience in terms of why they would be visiting you. What are the attractions? Badil, who's on the call today, she's got a marvelous background there of New Lanark, just behind her. A World Heritage Site. We have so many World Heritage Sites here in Scotland. 13, I believe it is. Are you exploiting that? With your marketing, particularly your online marketing, can I really challenge you? Make it visual. Images really do speak 1,000 words, and people connect with the images. We have a fantastically beautiful country. Use it to your advantage. The last kind of rhetorical question I want to leave you with is, how easy is it for the consumer to buy from you? to channel direct business, we have to make it as easy as it is for our consumers to book through the big online branded OTAs. If people can make a booking in 3 or 4 clicks on the likes of booking.com or Expedia, we have to challenge ourselves that is our inquiry and booking system as straightforward and as easy to use that people can make a really quick booking. Because ultimately, it's really easy for us to get tied up in how we want to run our businesses and our processes and procedures. One of the biggest lessons I learned in my 30 years as a hotelier, I have to try and see everything through the eyes of my customer, not through my own eyes. And what do customers want? They want easy, simple, straightforward booking processes. They want virtually instant confirmation. They want to know that they've got the stay, they've got it secured, and it's guaranteed. In the post-pandemic, the living with COVID world that we're now in, our consumers want flexibility. They want the peace of mind that should something go wrong, should they become unwell, should the pandemic take a turn for the worst, that they've got flexible bookings that they can change and adjust, and that they feel financially secure and safe. And all of that comes down to one thing, which is probably a nice segue for our next speaker, because it is all encompassed by one simple word of trust. Our consumers, our customers need to trust us, and they need to feel that we're acting entirely in their best interests. And if you do that and keep that forefront in everything that you do, I think 2022, despite 1 or 2 bumps in the road, can be a successful, strong year. I think that's enough from me. We've had a good 12, 15 minutes or so there. I've challenged you in a few aspects there. I've given you a few slightly uncomfortable things to think about and to encourage you to perhaps change your mindset a little bit in terms of how we operate and perform in our businesses. I'll be happy to take questions a bit later on. But again, Cassie, thank you ever so much for the opportunity to be here this morning. And for now, let me hand things back to you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Barry. Those are some really valuable insights. And I think one of the things that really struck me in your talk was the customer service element, that it's, if people are well looked after, they'll come back, they'll tell their friends, and they'll book directly with you.
Absolutely.
Really, having run my own B&B in Edinburgh for 12 years, it was all about that customer service and looking after people and giving them a simple way to book with you direct. Next to go is Paul Thomas, who I met 2 years ago through Entrepreneurial Spark, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm so happy that he's here talking to us today. He's going to speak to you about marketing on social media. We're very aware that the bad press surrounding Facebook lately has caused a lot of anxiety amongst smaller businesses who depend on it for getting the word out. Paul is going to speak to you now about how you can diversify your online presence and hopefully put those worries to rest. Paul is again a key player in the field after gaining over a decade's experience spearheading the digital transformation of a top accountancy firm. Paul started his own business, Paul Thomas Digital, to bring his specialist knowledge to the masses. Paul helps his clients build business strategy through a digital lens, working with established names and startups to open their eyes to the possibilities of our fast-moving digital world. He is passionate about technology, workplace communication, culture, social media, and how modern organizations stay connected digitally whilst creating value for themselves, their clients, and stakeholders. He also runs a podcast called Start at the Top about leadership, digital culture, and change. And we'll make sure you're sent that link after the webinar. And he's also got an ambition to one day run his own B&B. Thank you for being here today, and over to you, Paul.
No worries whatsoever. And I guess that there's a whole bunch of people here that could offer me a lot of advice around that B&B. But yeah, ever since my traveling days, went to New Zealand and stayed in a really lovely place and thought, yeah, this would be a cracking way to make a living, meet loads of people coming through the house and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's the future. Today is the present, and the first thing I've got to do is share my screen and hope all this works. So I'm going to share the screen because I do have a few slides. And if I press play on this, then hopefully you'll be able to see my first slide. Yay, it's working. Yeah, I'll take that as a yes. So thank you for the intro. I'll just caveat my voice today. I've been suffering from a cold for about 2 weeks. So if I suddenly have a coughing fit in the middle, I will try and put myself on mute. It's quite hard when you're sharing screens to do that. So maybe just mute me if I start to do that. As Cassie says, I started my business, Paul Thomas Digital. You're in the lucky position of sort of seeing the morphing of Paul Thomas Digital into something that's a bit broader, that allows me to bring in a greater level of expertise into my business. So I'm in the new year going to start a new brand, and it's all built around this idea of digital and social media being exciting. And I know that some of you will be joining this call having a sense of dread, you know, oh God, he's going to talk about social media, he's going to talk about digital, and I'm just not confident in those spaces. So I get that is a way to look at this. But it is an industry, digital transformation, sold on fear and on worry and on keeping up. And I think some of it is about keeping up, and some of it is about making sure you're fit for the future. But some of it is just about excitement. So when I look at the world, I do see it through a digital lens, a digital first world full of world-changing possibilities. I help clients to transform those possibilities into real opportunities to explore transformational and purposeful change in your business, and help to empower your employees and hopefully excite your customers. So this first picture is how I really think you should look at the opportunity of digital, or our focus this morning, which is social media. But I understand that for some of you on the call, this is probably more of the reality, that you've just got to, you're just wondering, it's quite daunting. Where do you start? What do you do? How do you move forwards? And I would say, like this little boy at the bottom, it's one step at a time. So just take it one step at a time. Don't rush this. And just to sort of place this a little bit, I'm sure some of you will recognise Squid Game from the screen now. Show of hands, anyone watched it? Oh, Cassie's in. Yeah. So this Squid Game's had a remarkable level of success with the younger demographics than its 15 rating should allow. There's been a conversation in my house about whether my eldest can watch it. Having seen the first couple of episodes, I'd already decided no, and having seen the entire series, I think it's probably one that I will keep away from him. And that's a constant battle, as anyone with kids of that age, sort of 12, 13, will understand. There's stuff that you can open them up to and stuff that you might want to share with them. But the interesting behavior that happened around Squid Game is that there were a whole bunch of discussions happening behind the scenes on WhatsApp, in particular among the mums and dads networks around our school. Oh, the kids want to watch Squid Game. Should I let them? What do you think? Have you seen it? What do you think? You know, what's your impression of it? And my wife came to me and sort of said, oh, I know you're watching it. What would you say? And the one piece of advice that I would give them is watch the first couple of episodes and decide for yourself. You know, that's the basic rule on any of this stuff, is have a go yourself and then you'll know. And I guess this is my advice with social media. Don't decide whether you're in or out, before you've dipped a toe in and had a look for yourself. So that's the sort of the premise for where I would sort of come at this from. And I just wanted to break it down very, very simply and sort of put a marker in the sand for where I stand with the channels. And some of this might be a bit glib, but you know, we've got to cut this down to basics. So I'm sure you'll have questions on where to put all the eggs from your basket. Twitter is really, for me, it's about having a finger on the pulse. It's all the news. It's fed up. It's up to date. It's what's happening now. Too many views. Lots of people sharing opinions, good and bad. And I think it's about that short-term burst of content. It's very reactive, reacting to stories, reacting to things that are happening around you. But it's useful because of its speed, because of that flow of information. More and more, in my eyes, more and more businesses that I'm working with are struggling with Twitter. And I understand why, particularly if you look at something like the professional services world or accountancy world. It's a very dry area. It's very hard to sort of be relevant in a space that's evolving at that speed. But we can, you know, you can ask me as many questions about Twitter as you want in the at the end. Instagram, images, videos, great for small businesses with products to show, places to show, accommodation to show, rooms, breakfasts, all of that sort of stuff. Browsable content has more longevity. It really is probably the place that you, as owners of small hotels or small or rooms, would want to spend time. LinkedIn, and Cassie and I have talked about this in great depth. It's the forgotten and misunderstood social network, but it's the biggest business network there is. And I'll start to show you a couple of examples, I hope, of how LinkedIn can really be of benefit to you, particularly around that point that Barry mentioned around building trust. Facebook, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm probably going to let my biases come through too much, but it's the frightening one. It's got a huge, great, big, scary grip on the world. And TikTok, the new kid on the block, highly engaging, youthful, really worth investing time to look at and figure out how you could use it. I saw a really long, I wouldn't say it was a wonderful article, but a long article on using TikTok in the B2B space yesterday, which was interesting. Lots of points raised, but can I see some of the accountants I work with using TikTok? Not just yet, thank you very much. And just to reiterate on Facebook, you know, you can make up your own mind. When I say scary, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at a site that is built on a vision that I think is quite frightening, actually. The amount of money that is still made by that machine under Facebook, despite all the problems, despite all the issues, despite the whistleblowing of the last few weeks. And then the really scary thing is the metaverse and how that's starting to come together in Mark Zuckerberg's mind, and how he wants you to experience life like this. I don't know whether any of you have seen Ready Player One, but this is what I'm seeing. And to one degree or another, I quite like the idea of being able to immerse myself in a strange new world. But I also want to experience this one. You know, this is the world that I want to experience. This is the world that I want to live in and see. So I think there's a decision along the line coming with Facebook. And again, we can go into that in a little bit more detail, or if anyone wants to pick up the phone to me and talk to me about, you know, how to diversify away from Facebook, then I'm more than happy to do it. But this is the world that I want to live in. Anyway, why is this all important? So as far as I'm concerned, strong time, good time invested in your social media presence is absolutely vital to building trust in your business and in your offer. And I'll give you a very brief story about to back up exactly what Barry was saying earlier on. About 5 or 6 weeks ago, we were discussing my youngest son's birthday is the 2nd of January, and we'd like to go away. So we had a bit of a look around the internet, and we found a property in Hayling Island, so not too far away from us, by the sea. Ticked all the boxes that we wanted just for a few days away over New Year. And we found it both on booking.com and Airbnb. And we looked at it, we assessed it, we looked at all the different pictures. We figured out this was the place we wanted to be. And we hit that booking button, only to almost immediately have an email from the owner saying, would you like to book with me directly? Which throws up for my wife in particular, was coming to me and saying, well, what do you think? You know, this is somebody that we're you know, potentially going to have to put money into a bank account. We don't know who this person is. And I said, well, have a look for them and have a look for their property, have a look for their business away from those two sites, away from booking.com and away from Airbnb, and see if you can find them elsewhere. And there wasn't much to tell. So it was a real sort of leap of faith, I guess. We had to pick up the phone. We had a conversation with the lady involved. We decided in the end that on balance that it was fine, but the risk for us was that we lost the cancellation policy, which was different on booking.com and Airbnb. We potentially lost the cancellation policy, so we wanted to be clear on that. We wanted to be clear on the cost. We wanted to be clear on the safety and the guarantee that comes through booking on one of those platforms. But I'm not saying that you can't do this, you can't make that approach. What I'm saying is that if you do it well, trying to move on to the next slide and it's not working. If you do it well, as these guys do, this is a great example of a business doing this really well. We stayed around the woods in Norfolk. It's a glamping site. We stayed there a couple of years back, and we've constantly stayed in touch with them through their social media, through their newsletter. Their newsletter is really entertaining. It comes through once a month. They're really good at that last minute, because they know where their customers live. That last minute, we've got space, we've got a cancellation, last minute cancellation. If you'd like to book, here's a special offer. All of that stuff comes through on a regular basis. But the important thing to notice here is that it's run by a couple called Kate and Seb. Now, we couldn't find, let's just say the lady in Hailing Island was called Kate. We couldn't find Kate on the internet without really delving deep and trying to find her. But we can see Kate from Kate and Seb on her Instagram feed. We can see her son in the background. We can see the experience that she's selling. And that, to me, helps to build the trust that I need in order to make that booking. And plus, as Barry said, what she's also doing through that site, as you can see, the wonderful sunset over one of the yurts that she runs in, all of that is coming through in her social media feeds and through the newsletters. So that trust, once we've been there and we've done that, is cemented through those channels. Another great example, and I think Cassie knows Hector as well, is Hector Hughes. So I first came across Hector through LinkedIn. Actually, he approached me on LinkedIn and connected. So he runs a business called Unplugged. I came across him because I was sharing something around digital detox, and he came to me and said, well, here's the ultimate digital detox. It's got no power, you've got no electricity, you've got no Wi-Fi, come and stay in one of my cabins. And I think the interesting thing with this is, as you can see on the far left hand side, there's sort of quite aspirational, well taken photos of what the experience might look like. In the middle there, you can see him and his business partner. You can see the cabin starting to take form. The social media, the mailing list that he sends out is really good, because it not only tells you about the growth of the business and how to book and all that sort of stuff, but as you can see, it's probably a bit small on your screens, but do read, listen, watch. Sending this content that's carefully curated to sort of enhance the experience, or to at least enhance some of the values of the business that he's running. And I think that is really, really well done. But the other thing is, he does have that LinkedIn presence still. And I think on LinkedIn, what you're able to do is really separate the business from the business owner. And this is what Cassie and I first started to talk about a couple of years back, was how does Cassie as an entrepreneur present herself and her business and the booking platform and all of the stuff that she's doing, tech entrepreneur Cassie Bouverie, from the business, which is the glossy photos of Scotland and the being able to book seamlessly without those fees. So what you're getting here from Hector is a real honest, you can see on the right hand side, a real honest open book on what it's like to actually be an entrepreneur, what it's like to start these businesses. And that, for me, just builds a sense of trust that I wouldn't hesitate to go to him and book directly to stay in one of his cabins. And I just thought we should showcase Cassie as well at this point to show that Cassie's done exactly the same. So on the left-hand side, you've got the LinkedIn profile that really shows that entrepreneur, that businesswoman, certainly carried through onto Twitter, but almost separating herself from the Private House Stays brand, which is all about showing beautiful and brilliant images of Scotland and the wonderful, beautiful country that she's backing with this. So just to round up, because I'm conscious that we've gone into about 10 minutes. Social media can be daunting, but jump in, have a look around, see how each platform works, make your own decisions, take your time, step by step. It's fine. You don't need to rush into this. It's not going away. It's about 15 years I've been talking about this stuff, and it's still, sometimes you speak to people and you think it's like the first time they've ever considered it. So 15 years down the line, we're still asking all these questions about social media. Decide what might work for you and your business. Don't spread yourself too thinly. Two platforms is fine to begin with. Don't just jump on a platform because you think you should. I've seen so many examples of organizations and businesses that jump on the new platform just to say that they're there, but haven't really considered how they're going to use that. So if you're thinking about TikTok, really take some time to understand the demographic you'd be talking to and why you'd want to invest time on that. By all means, diversify away from Facebook. I'm not going to go on too much about how much I detest that platform. And I understand that it is also the foundation of things like WhatsApp and Instagram as well. But really do think strongly about the way that you're using Facebook. Don't be too reliant on it, as we saw a few weeks ago when everything went down for those 7 hours. They really do have quite a lot of power in all of this, and it's quite frightening. And finally, build your story. And build your story. If you build your story online, then you will start to build trust in your organization. So it's keeping it simple, really, just talking. And I just thought I would put this up while I finished, which is about me and the business that I'm building. So if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask, please do shout.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much. Gosh, I've still got so much to learn from you. And, you know, really appreciate you and Barry talking to us all here today. And there were some, you know, incredibly valuable points that I hope will benefit us all. I'd love to open up the floor now to some questions. Please don't be shy, as this is a great opportunity to pick the brains of our two experts. Either, you know, if you want to put them in the chat, we're monitoring the chat. I know my team have got a couple to ask. So has anybody got some questions for Paul or Barry? And take yourself off mute.
I've got a couple of random questions for Paul. The slides that you were showing, there was the very first one was a picture of the girl jumping, and there was another one with a bed on the side of a cliff. Were they both of the Remarkables?
I don't know actually.
Okay.
I don't
Just
know.
a random picture.
No, I should know. No, so top tip. So I'm full of top tips. Top tip is the website that I tend to use most for photography that isn't my own is unsplash.com, because it's all free to use. What you will find though is you sort of attend people's presentations. You go, oh, that's my brand. You've put that up there because it's all completely open and shareable. The only thing that they ask is if you connect with or share the names of the people that took the photograph. So yeah, I should know. The detail is probably there, but sorry, it might be the Remarkables.
It's okay, Paul. I'll go and look. Thank you.
Thanks, Bodil. So any more questions? Have we checked the chat? Let's have a quick look in the chat. Have we got any questions in there? I don't think so. So
could I just ask Cassie?
Sorry. Of course, Sharon. Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Thank you. This has been very, very interesting for me. I was very keen to get on because I run a fashion business and I'll do a lot of work on Facebook in addition to the B&B. And yes, and I think I am very conflicted, as Paul has said about using Facebook. It's becoming just a bit of a place for people to advertise stuff now. And do you see LinkedIn as a good alternative for this?
It depends what you're doing. I think this is the problem, isn't it? When you get a monopoly like Facebook. In terms of alternatives, I think there are platforms that do a little bit of the same work. Like, for example, Etsy is a platform for makers that I spend quite a bit of time on myself. It doesn't quite do everything that Facebook would do, but from a sort of a commercial and shop building point of view, it's worth looking at. And Instagram is starting to build all those things in, but obviously is still Facebook. So I think it's about starting to look at how you sort of build your own digital infrastructure, I guess, and use places like Shopify and other places to start to build your own system. So unfortunately, I think the word you picked is absolutely right. It's a conflict. It's a complete conflict. I still haven't deleted my Facebook account because it's the only one in the family now because my wife deleted hers. So every so often there are things that we need to just go in and have a look at. We have to check. Our cat apparently terrorizing the local neighborhood was an example earlier in the year where we had to go in and check his presence on Facebook because apparently he was being photographed by our neighbors, which is great. But that's a reason to go on there. But other than that, I think it's just about thinking, don't over rely on it. I'm certainly seeing this in the charity sector where because of the free tools and the free access that Facebook give you, the charity sector loves Facebook for fundraising. But when it goes, for example, when it goes down, and the reason it went down is because they built all of their infrastructure on their own infrastructure, so they couldn't even get the engineers in the building because the doors wouldn't open because the doors locking mechanism was built on Facebook. You start to see that there is a real power vacuum. It's all being sucked into that sort of San Francisco startup world, and it's just trying to think about places that you can go and you can spend your money on maybe a slightly less rich experience, but one that you can feel confident is headed in the right direction.
Brilliant. That's a great question, Sharon. Thank you so much. Any more questions before? I know my team have got a couple they want to ask. So who wants to kick off? I think Beth, didn't you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I've got one for Barry, if that's okay. I was wondering, what can you do to drive more direct inquiries rather than sort of through OTAs?
Okay, it's a question I'm often asked, Beth, so thanks for raising that one. I think it's really a question of visibility and presence in the social media world. What the OTAs are very good at doing is bringing the consumer into their platform in order to book your property. One of the reasons that we have to pay such high commission levels to the OTAs is that they reinvest an awful lot of that money in their marketing to get the consumer onto the site. Now, the key thing for an independent owner to get presence, a lot of what Paul's been talking about in terms of social media is about positioning your business and getting visibility with your target market. And the thing is, there's no substitute for that. So if you want to make the choice of not paying those commission level and those high levels of commission to the OTAs, and I notice in the chat someone's asking what does OTA stand for? Online travel agent is the answer, and I'm referring there to people like Airbnb, Booking.com, Hotels.com, and such. They're marketing tools. They're bringing your customer to you. If you don't want to be working with those partners, or you want to control the levels that you're working on, you really need to focus on your own marketing activity. And in today's world, that is largely going to be through social media.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you, Barry. Thank you. So I think we've got, who's monitoring the chat? I think we might have another question in there. Have we got another question that's come in? We've got the online travel agent. So James, did you have a question?
Yep. So we search for online B&Bs in our location. Individual properties will tend to be much lower than Airbnb and the other OTAs. So how can we improve this?
Thanks, James. Yeah, good question. And there's an old joke that you may have heard before: the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 on Google. And it really brings to home the fact that if you think about your own habits, when you go on the likes of Google or any other search engine to search for travel, to book a flight, to book a hotel, to book accommodation, for any kind of online shopping, our natural habit is that we only tend to look at the very front page, and we tend only to look at the first maybe 5 or 6 listings. How do you get yourself in, to that high ranking, to get yourself into the first page of Google and into those first 5 or 6 rankings? And it's a commercial activity. So it comes down to a couple of things. First of all, as the owner of a small independent accommodation business, have you registered your Google My Business place? So have you got your business registered on Google My Business? If you haven't, or if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about, that is the one thing that I would urge you to do when you step away from this call today. Get your Google My Business ranking up to date, because that feeds all of the search engine activities that happen online. The other thing you'll often notice, particularly if you're searching for accommodation in a specific area, the Google listings usually will start with the big OTAs, because they're paying to be there. They are paying for optimal listings at the top of the Google page. whenever you search, you might search B&Bs in Oban, B&Bs in Loch Arbor, and you'll find it'll be the likes of booking.com, Expedia that will come up first. Then a little bit further down the page, what you'll find is listings of some of the local independent businesses, and they'll have done one of two things. They've got their Google My Business sorted out, and also they've probably got their website optimized for SEO, search engine optimization. Now, it's quite a technical skill. I would always suggest speaking to an expert to help you and give you some advice in SEO, but that will dramatically help to get your property further up near the top of the page, and it's being near the top of the page that is critical.
Fantastic. That's great, Barry. So I think we might have just a couple more questions. I know I want to make sure that we stay on time, and we've got a lovely video to play you just at the end. But John, did you have a question?
Yeah, mine's more for Paul. It's in terms of like social media and stuff like that. How do you have any tips for keeping up with content and stuff like that, and maybe a sort of schedule and the type of things that we should be posting?
Yeah, and I've seen a number. Every time you begin the month, I see a whole bunch of people that I know within my network sharing things like 30 things to share on social media in November. It happens like clockwork every month. I think the thing is to look at your own calendar and your own business, and look at the things that are happening in and around you and your community. So especially if you're, if you're location based property, then look at what's happening in the calendar around the region, and then the country, and then from that point the world as well. Anything that you think is going to influence your business or your customers. There are some neat places online that will show you all those national holidays or those national days. For example, like a couple of weeks ago, last week I think was National Black Cat Day. For goodness sake, there is a day every day of the calendar, so there are things that you can concentrate on. I also would recommend, so for my business is obviously it's sort of steeped in digital marketing, so there are a number of newsletters and things that I subscribe to that I actually pay attention to. So for example, the wired.com one, although it's slightly changed in the last few months, has always been really, really helpful. A little bit of inspiration every day around lunchtime, just to sort of push your thinking. And another thing that I really like and have talked about quite excessively is a little app called Feedly. Feed, Feedly. Have a look at it. There are, like anything, there are paid options and there are free options, but Feedly is really interesting because what it allows you to do is to build feeds around keywords made up of content from all over the internet, magazines, publications, all those types of things. So it allows you to get really focused on the publications that are specific to your industry. And then you can put keyword searches in there so that when you open up Feedly every morning, which I would recommend do what I do, have a little note in your diary every morning at 9 o'clock to look at Feedly, because you need to build that habit. You need to build those prompts to make sure that you're looking at it. Have a look at Feedly and just see what's happening in the industry around you, what's happening in other people's businesses. Because it's not necessarily about what you create, it's about what you share from the industry around you as well. So really important to create your own content, but that stuff's hard. It's really easy to find somebody else's content, to share it, to like it, to comment on it, to work with that. And I particularly think that with a business like Cassie's, for example, where half the battle isn't about promoting your own business, but it's about promoting other people's businesses. And that's a really key thing to get your head around on social media, that community that you can build around your business and your social networks is much more important than just you as an individual. So promote each other, act as that sort of ambassador through the content that you share, and Feedly will help you get some of the way. And it'd be interesting to just hear from people whether they try it and like it.
Wonderful, Paul. Would you be able to send a wee email with those just key links that I can forward on to everybody who's come to the webinar? I know there are several people who sent me messages saying they've missed it. They'd like to catch up on the video, so that would be really, really helpful. And we've got one last question, I think, from James before we're going to play you a video. And I really hope you all have a fantastic Guy Fawkes night. Are you all going to, watch some fireworks tonight? And really appreciate all your time. And thank you very much, Barry and Paul, for such an insightful hour. So James, will you just say your one last question before we play you a nice video? And I'm not too sure who it's going to be asked to either.
Yeah, so when we're getting a lot of inquiries about staying, they don't always turn into bookings when you're looking on the website or when you're looking for places to stay. So is there anything you can do to help that?
Okay, good. Thanks for that, James. Good question. Whenever I see a situation where there's lots of inquiries, but it's not converting into paid business, it suggests to me that there's something not quite right within the sales process that's happening there. Now, particularly if this, with B&Bs and accommodation providers, if this is people telephoning you with inquiries and asking to check dates, one of the things really to be mindful of is that thanks to the internet, people's shopping habits have really changed. And it's something we've seen across the whole kind of hotel, meeting and events, wedding market, that when somebody's actually inquiring from you, they're interested. They're already interested. They've done their research through Google. They've done their research through the internet of where they'd like to stay. So if they're calling you, they're already interested in booking a stay with you. A couple of things that I would suggest. I'm cautious of time. So a couple of things I would suggest. Are we making the process of making a booking with you really simple and as straightforward as it can be? Because that's what customers are looking for. Every time we put a barrier in their way, we risk the potential of them going somewhere else. The kind of thing I'm talking about is if we're not able to actually answer their phone call, if we're not able to answer the query that they've got, if we don't have the information to hand, such as if they're asking availability for a weekend in August, we need to have access to that information to be able to answer them. Secondly, are you actually asking for the business? You would be amazed the number of businesses that I interact with who I can make an inquiry and they'll never actually ask me for the business. And it's as simple as, well, you're asking about festival weekend in Edinburgh in the middle of August. Yep, we've got availability for there. Can I book that for you? And you would be amazed, simply by asking for the sale, you'd be amazed the positive impact that will have on your conversion rates. And the third final thing, a little trick that I love to share with businesses that I work with. Be very careful about how you structure the conversation. And if somebody's asking you about availability, or they're asking about for more information about the room types that you have within your property, always really try hard that you never structure the conversation that it's a yes or no answer. So we don't want the answer to be yes, I've got availability, and leave it hanging there. I would always encourage structure it as giving people a choice, and the option within that choice is never to say no. So yeah, I've got a fantastic room that overlooks the beach. I've also got a family room that overlooks the gardens. Which one would you prefer? And it's a really strong, powerful psychological message, that, because if you don't give no as an option, an awful lot of people will not say no to you. You've asked the question, would you like this one? Or, would you like the beach view room, or would you like the garden room view? They'll answer one or the other. So there's a couple of just really simple tips that if you implement those, I'm very confident will help to improve those conversions.
Brilliant, Barry. I will also send out the links to Barry's fantastic books. He's a publisher of 2 books now, and hopefully, you're going to share them. Fantastic. So I'll send those off. And yeah, if we can finish off just with our lovely video that Thomas Hayward made for us, just promoting our wonderful country. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of the day. James, over to you with the video. Thanks for coming. Okay, thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend. We've finished right on the dot of 12. It's perfect. Bye.